I just never have the plans of whether I wanted to stop talking about SpongeBob or not, but considering that I've completely upset people who actually enjoyed Friend or Foe and maybe Golf Wars, I think I should probably discuss what I actually feel about Frozen Face Off, even if it's not a Christmas special. But considering that we've always started and I've already uploaded one fanfic reading involving Hearthwarming and My Little Pony, I guess that me talking about a snow episode during Christmas is probably the only way to actually express my feelings towards of how this show just tries way too hard to get some kind of attention, despite the fact that at the end of the day, it's a ratings trap. But I will say that this episode is better than the last two, but that's not saying much. This episode is, well, the citizens of the Bikini Bottom are in a sled race in order to win $1 million. Which, of how this episode opens up, I can really tell that for anyone who lives in Alaska or any other location that has windy mountains, they would always go to a sled competition because in the real world, dogs or snow dogs completely carry the cart of the person's sled. And in this, it's mainly worms just completely carrying the sea animals minus sandy cheeks in order to win first place. Now, for me personally, I really think that this could easily make this probably one of the best SpongeBob specials in the post-movie era, because of how this episode starts off with the characters just being prepared to have a race is a really good start. I can easily forgive the fact that this episode is 22 minutes long, and we can actually get to see a great race between SpongeBob and the other main characters, because I always have this obsession with racing, and even in animation, I still enjoy it. However, the biggest issue is that the title is false advertising, just like the episode Shuffleboarding. When the race begins, the main Patrick's sled doesn't even move because he completely used jelly worms, not really jelly worms, but fake worms in order to use them to move the sled. But unfortunately, this is just taking ideas from the snail race, while he just used a rock, and for some reason it managed to him to win. But it really goes to show that it doesn't work the second time. So Patrick, along with the other characters, just get onto SpongeBob's sled after the sleds are completely destroyed. And Plankton was in this. Unfortunately, he completely bailed out and went to the Krusty Krab and to steal the Krabby Patty secret formula, like he usually does. And as for the main characters, are completely alone together because they're in a situation where they're completely lost during the race, and the race of from the Bikini Bottom citizens is easily dropped. Yeah. I don't even understand onto why this episode is called Frozen Face Off. Well, we don't get to see the race. I get that this episode isn't called Frozen Race or Sled Race or anything like that, but when you completely have an episode that is called Frozen Face Off, you should easily expect that there's going to be some kind of fight or race. And for how this episode is being advertised, I honestly think that the writers of the show just cannot even make up the mind of what the direction of each episode wants to go to. Because at this point, even though that these episodes are becoming a decade old, it still raises more questions whether you look at them even in the present. And what SpongeBob and the other characters do for the majority of this episode, they encounter the abominable snow Mollusk, which is a snowy octopus in stop motion, which is probably the best stop motion effects I've seen from the show, but at the same time, it doesn't excuse the fact that it just made this episode really false advertising. I will say that the encounters that SpongeBob and the other characters have against the Smolix is really entertaining in the fact that it actually leads to really entertainment from this episode, which is the characters just trying to escape the Monarchs while also just trying to get back to the Bikini Bottom, which is where it's not snowing and it's a lot more harder. But this just leads to the fact that, again, it just drops the waist and it doesn't do much whatsoever regarding to the episode's title. I know I'm not giving this episode any credit for taking a different direction, and I will admit that the characters, despite being really one-dimensional or two-dimensional, they're still likable, and Patrick isn't as selfish as he was compared to the other appearances I've seen from him. However, when I completely look at this episode involving the characters getting in a situation that they're not only out of the waste, but also completely freezing to death in order to get back, while also just trying to stop Plankton from stealing the Krabby Patty formula yet again, I can easily tell that there were other episodes that have done this idea much more better. Besides the many episodes of Plankton stealing the formula, this episode just takes ideas from the SpongeBob episode, Survival of the Idiots, while Patrick and SpongeBob are trapped in Sandy's tree dome while it's snowing, and while Sandy is in her hibernation state. But instead of just having Patrick and SpongeBob, we get to see Mr. Krabs, Squidward, Karen, and Sandy, since that she isn't in hibernation right now. I'm not trying to express my opinions as facts, but for how this show just doesn't stay true to its episode cards, and the fact that it just decides to do whatever it wants because it's popular, really makes me say that SpongeBob is way too overexposed. And as of in the present, the fact that there's going to be a spin-off and other materials, it just makes me really depressed on the fact that SpongeBob is just going to be the same, is going to stay forever, and just won't never end. Yes, I get it. It's Nickelodeon's most popular cartoon, and I keep saying that constantly in all my SpongeBob reviews. But when you completely look at how they just make this episode just basically the characters surviving out of the location that they're in while having Plankton just completely stealing the formula like he usually does, it just makes this episode really pointless than having some kind of actual purpose. When I was watching this episode for my preparation for this review, I was actually expecting this episode to be actually really good for something that comes out in the post-movie era. And I really think that the abominable snow Monarchs will have some kind of role during the race. However, he does have a role, but at the same time, all he ever does is just completely be forced into the plot by completely attacking the main characters, and he actually does something helpful at the end. Yeah. This episode is just like every other episode from the show, except that it doesn't take any risks or do some kind of creative ideas. Yes, the Monarchs is a creative idea, but how it's portrayed in this, it just didn't work out for me. If you actually made me convinced on the fact that this episode is good compared to the other episodes, I would try to agree with you, but after watching this, I just think that it could have been much more better than what we've ended up getting instead. I don't even think that this episode would be really memorable compared to the other specials, because for one, for as much as how I don't enjoy most of the specials from SpongeBob, I can at least understand that they actually do grab some attention for how they try to make those stories entertaining for the crowd. I will admit that the last two specials, mainly Gulf Wars and Final Fall, really did a good job at advertising. And for this advertising from this episode, it did its job well, but when you look at the episode itself, it's not really anything special, and it's just basically in the plain SpongeBob episode, just extended for 22 minutes. And I should probably adjust this right away so I don't have to address this in a later episode with you whenever I talk about SpongeBob. I've been told or heard that these episodes have been rushed for the fact that Nickelodeon want more episodes. And I would easily agree with me on that, but for how terrible these episodes were, I honestly think that they could have been a lot more safer instead of just hammering in on the fact that they're just trying to do these for the sake of money and nothing else. And look, even though the Nickelodeon is desperate for SpongeBob material, I still cannot able to see on how the motivation was by trying to actually make this episode really entertaining if it actually had the snow waste or the sled waste at the beginning and at the end of this episode, because when you completely see that it doesn't have any kind of focus, it just makes this episode mainly just a mollusk doing dangerous things in stop motion, and SpongeBob and the other characters just completely do different things in order to actually get back to the Bikini Bottom. That's it. Yes, I get it. This cartoon is for comedy and it shouldn't be taken seriously. But when you completely make an episode that isn't like one of the worst SpongeBob episodes, mainly One Course Meal and other episodes, you really should expect it to actually be at least entertaining and actually unique for how it's trying to make its ideas good. Sometimes I can easily see onto why people enjoy episodes like these, but at the same time, I just think that they probably could have done a lot more better instead of what they had. And if you're gonna actually if you're actually looking forward to me actually reviewing to one of the other specials from SpongeBob, I do have plans, but at the same time, don't expect me to review them right away once we hit the new year. But I will review an episode from the sequel era, the post-sequel era. Well, I think it's considered probably the weirdest way to consider a good episode. Not just from the sequel era, from the post-sequel era, but in all of SpongeBob. But you're gonna have to wait until I upload my January schedule in order to understand where I'm coming from, or what I'm talking about. As for this episode, I give it a 6.75 out of 10. I am being a bit nice to it, but at the same time, I honestly think that they could have at least put more focus on the waste instead of just basically making this Survival of the Idiots 2, along with Plankton's doing the Krabby Patty formula again. At this point, the writing gags of this is starting to become really old, and I honestly don't think, if I ever watch the later episodes, I'm probably gonna have a hard time laughing at the humor whenever they actually do those plots again.